Thank you for having me. Today I would like to talk about our journey from start as a project internally to fully-fledged product as a public cloud offering on Azure Marketplace. It won't be very technical. I would rather show you some high-level steps and some important decisions we faced in the past when building this. And additionally, I'm going to briefly explain how it eventually led us to partnership with Microsoft, and if you are interested, what to do to grow your expertise in this field. For those of you who want to build a product or maybe understand different options on Azure Marketplace, this talk might be a good starting point for you. As Pavel mentioned, I work at VirtusLab as engineering manager, mostly around cloud-native technology landscape. We develop platforms and help our customers with cloud transformation processes, where significant part of this was based on Azure Cloud in recent years. Okay, let's get started. So if we look back in 2016, the time when we were building a container as a service platform based on self-hosted Kubernetes for one of our customers, the cloud-native technology landscape was still getting more traction, and most of the technologies we use these days were not really mature. For example, a typical Jenkins deployment was done via Helm 2, which was full of promise, and official Helm charts were far from production ready. There was always something to fix there. It often led to maintaining your own private fork with a bunch of additional Groovy scripts to install plugins or configure Jenkins itself, which quickly became unmaintainable as it grew to a large scale. The number of issues and support activities related to managing Jenkins at scale forced us to rethink our initial approach. So we started looking at OSS operator pattern to automate the full lifecycle of Jenkins and take advantage of built-in capabilities in Kubernetes like auto-scaling, self-healing, or declarative configuration as code using custom resource definition to extend existing API format and introduce our own. Then finally we released the initial version of Jenkins Kubernetes Operator project, which was the foundation for future work, of course, and quite quickly became adopted by the community and hosted under the official Jenkins GitHub organization. So that time we had to invest even more engineering effort to review pull requests, fix bugs, and manage community in general, present some conference talk like this one. Actually, the picture shows our booth at Lisbon Jenkins World, and this time the team was relatively small, and it was really hard to handle all of that in addition to our day-to-day work with customers. So with time, we must decide what's the direction of travel for this project, how we can have more people working full-time on this, whether it's building a community brand with open source version, with optional enterprise support, which, to be honest with you, didn't work much. We tried that already. Or on the other hand, build kind of SaaS offering around this. And we have finally figured out what might be the potential monetization path for this product, which is, of course, Azure Marketplace, according to the top title. So as you can see, if you actively look for problems and possible solutions in your project or day-to-day work, this can result in a good product idea, just like in our case. So it's really important for all of us to very well understand the problem space within your project, and maybe this can be a good idea to build something on top of that. In our case, as I mentioned earlier, we were responsible for building quite large internals of the container as a service platform, and Jenkins was one of the managed services we were providing for our dev teams, individually per team, with more than 100 of people on that platform. And it quickly became very hard to scale for us because we couldn't focus on anything else apart from fixing Jenkins issue, configuring this. Helm chart wasn't that good as we might expect. So we finally were forced to automate ourselves, like basically we don't need to worry anymore about that because software can take care of that, and we can shift our focus towards other managed services or anything related to platform development. But before I start talking about marketplace part, it's really important to understand our initial assumptions and requirements we wanted to incorporate into the product vision. Of course, when you're developing the early version of your product with limited number of people, like in our case, you want to do it fast and cheap. And you might think about this as a fail fast and rapid prototyping approach when you want to eventually validate your thinking on the market, gather as much feedback from limited number of customers, and then reiterate and implement missing capabilities, improve the situation, and so on. So if we look at this list, one of the first things was that the service must be deployed to a customer environment. It was really important for us to allow our customers to deploy a service or product within their environment next to their networking architecture. We don't need to worry about exposing it securely because it's already within that environment and can be nicely integrated with existing components. It's a good option, especially in terms of CI/CD, where the network is internal only. You don't need to expose it over the internet. And this might be a huge security risk because most of the CI/CD servers are quite privileged in terms of access control, right? And then flexible pricing model. Azure Marketplace provides both pay-as-you-go, which is quite complicated to implement because you need to integrate with third-party API, and flat rate, which is super easy. You can specify base price in the web portal and its own marketplace to handle billing properly. You don't need to worry about that. Private audience option, it's especially viable in private preview phase where you want to limit access to your product to a small group of people and gather feedback as quickly as possible. As far as I know, Azure Marketplace gives you an option to configure up to 10 customers for the private preview. Everything above that, you would have to go with GA, which we will discuss later. Of course, the open source project, we want to actively maintain and develop new features, help our community with running Jenkins in a cloud-native environment on top of Kubernetes. And you can think about this as a core component of our product, where on top of that, we can provide more enterprise features and enterprise integrations with existing systems, but still actively maintain open source version, which is useful for most of the companies at small, medium scale. And finally, elevated access to application resources for troubleshooting. And not only, for example, if we would have to help our customers set up initial CI/CD workflows, or we have kind of automation and management controllers to look constantly after the client part, that's the good way to do that. Why Azure Marketplace, actually? Why we decided to start with it? Apart from the market share, which is quite significant, as you can see, mostly because it can vastly speed up your go-to-market phase, especially if you are doing your early steps with your product. It doesn't make sense to invest your engineering time to develop, for example, licensing, pricing, publishing capabilities, Especially at the day one, you want to focus on business value first, and only then, as your product matures with time, you might look at other options then. For us, Azure Marketplace was the best monetization path for our project, mostly because we can expand our sales option, especially with co-sell option, where Microsoft can start offering your product directly to their customers. Of course, there are some formal steps involved, like you need to have gold or silver status, you need to provide some marketing materials, but I will tell you more about that in the next slide. Publishing and billing are available by default as part of the platform itself. So yeah, we don't need to implement this. We can focus on business value, on features, instead of implementing complex billing system and publishing process. It's built in, actually. And also it provides easy to use access control model and cross-tenant access. So once the service is running within customer environment, we can use native Azure access control mechanisms like Active Directory, service principals, AD groups, and we don't need to worry about anything else. It's just a native ways of working with Azure, where most of the people are familiar with. Go-to-market benefits program is quite interesting because it's designed to support you at your specific stage of growth. As we transact more and more through the marketplace, we can unlock new benefits in areas of sales, marketing, or technical benefits as well. Okay, now the question is how we can package everything and publish it on marketplace. So depending on offer type, it might have different structure, requirements, and even content might be slightly different presented in the commercial marketplace. In our case, we didn't want to build SaaS from the day one because it's complex, requires more engineering time. We want to validate our idea first. And also, it has to be deployed in the publisher subscription, which is against our initial assumptions. So yeah, SaaS wasn't a good starting point. Where on the other hand, the managed application offer looked as a good starting point where we can get the most of built-in Azure Marketplace capabilities and focus on developing product instead. Maybe in the future we will look at SaaS offering, but for now, managed application, it's good enough. If we look, what's the actual difference between managed application and software as a service? So managed application is deployed to a customer environment next to their networking infrastructure, cloud resources, access control, and so on. It provides simple step-by-step installation wizard. So you have basically using a small JSON file, you can build your UI with existing widgets. Super easy thing to do. It doesn't require you to integrate with some third-party APIs to handle lifecycle of the product. And in terms of pricing, both flat pricing or custom billing using metering service API is possible. In terms of metering service API, this is kind of this might be useful for you if you, for example, would like to charge your customers based on some custom metrics like number of CPU cores consumed per hour or number of VMs within a resource group or any other custom metric your application exports. And based on these dimensions, you can define the price. It's quite flexible. And on the other hand, software as a service, it has to be deployed to a vendor environment, which for us usually means it's more on our shoulders to actively monitor, maintain, operate, and provide secure access to our software as a service. Additionally, in addition to simple step-by-step wizard, you also must create a landing page, which is kind of post-installation UI to configure product. And again, you have to use SaaS Fulfillment API to integrate this. It means that full life cycle of your product needs to be integrated with this API. It means every time customer creates, updates, or destroys, or do anything else with the product, you have to handle this API calls properly. Pricing is actually the same, so there is no other option. This diagram shows process of developing managed application internally and publishing it. As you can see, the first part on the left-hand side is using Azure Service Catalog. And this can be fully automated end-to-end, so you have a fast feedback loop as part of your development cycle, and Service Catalog is limited to your subscription and tenant only, so don't worry about exposing this to end users. This is the way of developing and testing software, which can be later published on Marketplace. But the publishing process is manual and requires some time to propagate, so it may slow down you a little bit. So it's better to iterate quickly on this over the Service Catalog, and when you are happy with your changes, go to the Marketplace, and then you can double check everything. It's also worth mentioning that in some cases you might have problems with different access control model, especially Azure Marketplace requires more permissions under some circumstances. So be very careful about managed identity role assignments. You have to double check if this works both on Service Catalog and Marketplace first. We had similar problems in the past, and it was very hard to troubleshoot. To give you better understanding how Azure Managed Application works under the hood, let's take a look at this diagram. So first, developer publishes offer on Azure Marketplace. It's usually it's a zip package with main template and create UI definition JSON files. So infrastructure as code plus UI definition in JSON with all these widgets which are built in. Then customer can create offer from Azure Marketplace, which executes main template under the hood. As a result, Azure Marketplace automation creates a dynamic managed resource group within client subscription. And it's really important to understand the fact that customer has limited access to these resources. Where customer has full access to the subscription, this resource group is pretty much constrained by a concept called allowed actions. So they can perform specific list of activities, which we specified as part of the product publishing process. And apart from that, they have read-only access to all resources. And developer, on the other hand, has full access to customer resource group. For troubleshooting and management activities, also that's a good place to run your automation. For example, if you have some management controllers, you want to automate some parts or actively monitor and reconcile the state of the product, that's the way to go. It's by the way, it's based on AD group, so you can add service principal or manage identity or user, and it has full access to the managed resource group, right? And also, it's worth mentioning what are the pain points when working with Marketplace, and be kind of honest with you. What are our struggles in the past? So first of all, there is no support for Terraform or any other third-party infrastructure as code technologies. It might be not a problem for you, but for us, we heavily invested in Terraform ecosystem, and it was like natural way of developing infrastructure. In terms of integration with cloud-native technologies like Kubernetes or Helm, unfortunately, built-in Azure ARM template doesn't support native integration with Kubernetes and Helm, so we had to find other way around, which I'm gonna show you later. Long publishing and propagation time, that's a small inconvenience, but be aware of the fact that it can take up to half an hour before all changes are propagated properly and visible and ready to deploy. Already published pricing plan cannot be changed, so once you decided on your product price, you can't change it anymore. It's immutable. You would have to publish new pricing plan and optionally deactivate the previous one. An initial offer setup is quite complex and time-consuming, especially for people who are doing this very first time. It takes time to understand portal, how to create company account, configure invoicing, generate some unique identifiers for your offer. But still, at the end of the day, it's all worth it because benefits are super useful for people who are just starting developing the product. Of course, it takes time to explore various different options, but still, with all these materials from Microsoft, it shouldn't be that hard. It's also early stage for us, and we don't know all of these details. We are constantly learning new things. Coming back to the main topic, as a result of this work, recently we announced Jenkins Operator Service. It's a cloud-native Jenkins platform built on top of Kubernetes with basically self-healing, auto-scaling capabilities. The product is cost-effective and also provides declarative configuration as code. It's in private preview now, but we are going to move toward GA release early in 2021. So definitely check this out. Let us know what do you think. If you see any room for improvement, yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation about that. The next slide. If we look closer at high-level architecture, it's fairly simple. As you can see, we have managed Kubernetes cluster with Jenkins Operator running on top of that, which manages Jenkins instance, including full lifecycle and initial configuration phase. Jenkins Operator itself is deployed via Helm chart from Azure VM using VM extension, which executes a bash script. We try to use Azure ARM template and concept called deployment script, but as I said earlier, it doesn't provide native integration with Kubernetes. It supports only PowerShell, which is also quite limited, and you need to be very careful because it can complicate your access control model, because this requires external managed identity, external role assignments. So yeah, it's not the best option. Maybe Microsoft will sort this out in the future. In comparison to Terraform, it could be super easy to use external providers to integrate with Kubernetes or release a Helm chart or any other integrate with any other resources. So, but it's a quite common pattern where companies have kind of external controllers running next to the actual infrastructure, and they have kind of automation software which manages this product and it's responsible for full reconciliation loop. In terms of access control mechanism, managed application supports the concept of customer allowed actions, which we discussed earlier. by which we can specify what our customers can do within this managed resource group, right? For example, as you can see on the list below, customers can configure VNet peerings to their existing network infrastructure and list Kubernetes credentials only. That's all they can do, apart from read-only access. Okay, and also I would like to tell you briefly what we are planning next, what our product roadmap. So in general, for us, one of the major challenges of building cloud-native CI/CD platform is to deliver the best developer experience and integration with enterprise tooling out of the box. You know, everything which makes the product usable from the day one, it will probably apply to any other product, but that's a very important aspect because from infrastructure point of view, setting up networking, runtime, monitoring, this often leads to some manual work and take significant time from your engineers. We're packaging everything on Azure Marketplace and providing support for infrastructure as code technologies can help here, especially at scale. Like in our case, for a large multi-tenant platform, hundreds of developers, dozens of different instances of Jenkins. This is a fairly important aspect to take into account. On the other hand, from developers' point of view, activities like onboarding, installing Jenkins, configuring plugins, or even setting up the first pipeline with Jenkins Operator, we can vastly simplify this process. And finally, centralized deployment, centralized Jenkins platform enables our customers to make sure the security and compliance is at the right level and constantly audited. There is a common problem, like especially at large organizations, in terms of standardization and compliance, where various different teams can do something slightly different, and it might be not aligned with company technology strategy or security standards. But if you have kind of product, you have the same way of working and the same basically CI/CD workflow in that case. In addition to Azure Marketplace platform, I got a couple of more resources for you to facilitate your product journey in Microsoft ecosystem. So if you build a complex system, it's worth taking a look at cloud design patterns. These are more generic software patterns, which are cloud agnostic, I would say. So even if you don't work with Azure on daily basis, you will definitely find it useful. In addition to the cloud design patterns, you might look at well-architected framework to understand how to run secure your workloads in Azure ecosystem, what kind of possibilities you have out there. Maybe you would like to know more how to operate around software in production. So these resources will definitely help you. In terms of defining processes and ways of working for your team or group of people focused on that specific area of product, Azure Cloud Adoption might be a good starting point for you. It applies for both cloud transformation processes. So if you offer like more consulting services, or you want to help your customers with digital transformation and help with cultural ways of working, this is super beneficial. And on the other hand, it also applies to building a product and organizing a team. Actually, this topic is part of bigger discussion and might be a good candidate for the next session, maybe. It's, as far as I remember, it's roughly 1,800 pages to read, so quite a lot. And all of this, which we were discussing today, eventually led us to partnership with Microsoft Azure. This actually marks our long-term commitment to help our customers with cloud transformation processes or building cloud native services like Jenkins Operator Service as examples, and some overcoming some cultural changes as well. For those of you who are interested in establishing partnership within your company, this is strategy draft, which I prepared some time ago to understand it better. Of course, it's not perfect, but at least helped me to reason about this complex process and where we should focus on first. So if you look on the top, we have the concept called digital partner of record, so-called DPOR. This indicates customer cloud spend. So as a partner, you need to indicate that your customers spend money on cloud and you closely work with them. So you can basically, the sooner you start, the better. It usually involves configuring your partner information across customers' subscriptions. Then alignment with cloud adoption framework and well-architected framework. It's more about defining your ways of working with customers. This will also require some marketing materials like blog posts, case studies, one-pagers, and of course, incorporating some concept in your product if you have any. It's really important from Microsoft point of view to know your company standards are aligned with their ways of working. Of course, it doesn't have to be the same. You don't have to duplicate what's already there. Rather, define your own ways of working according to your area of expertise and number of people you have within your company. Like long story short, make your work visible, share good practices, provide some decision trees, reference architectures you build with your customers, and that should be more than enough. Service offer on Azure Marketplace. So if you don't have product, you can still publish software consulting or any other consulting services as part of the marketplace offer. It doesn't have to be an actual product, but still can be beneficial for you to have something in your portfolio. Then moving on to Azure partnership, that's kind of formal step. This requires a formal certification, at least 2 people. And my advice here is to focus on cloud platform and achieve gold status as soon as you can to take an advantage of incentives and so-called go-to-market benefits offered by Microsoft. So you'll have some cloud credits to consume and facilitate your development of product, software licenses, additional marketing channels. You can promote your services or product. And also with Microsoft. As I said earlier, this requires some marketing materials like one-pager, sales deck, and maybe reference architectures if you have a product on Marketplace. But it's very beneficial for everyone because you can sell or offer services on behalf of Microsoft. That's additional marketing channel for you, so you can increase your ranges. And for most of the companies, end goal will be advanced specialization. It's kind of formal step because it involves certification again, at least 5 unique individuals certified in different areas, because you need to indicate you cover full spectrum of, for example, cloud transformation services. But at this point, you might be your actual partner. You can basically work hand in hand with Microsoft, and you can basically find new customers and which can use your product or you can help with your services you offer. Optionally, it's worth taking a look at independent software vendor, especially if you have products. If your business model is based on products you developed, it might be either software which is packaged and cloud adoption framework ready and published on Marketplace, or it can be closed source software you can offer our customers, but you would have to use different marketing channels and build kind of portfolio. It's called enterprise landing page, so that's where you can find it. Cool. If you find it interesting and you would like to be part of this journey with us, we have 2 positions open. It's mostly around like the technology stack I mentioned earlier, like Go, Kubernetes, Azure, or any other public cloud maybe in the future, and open source contribution on daily basis as well, and some community engagement. So feel free to contact me directly or anyone else from VirtusLab HR. That's all I have for today. If you have some questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can start discussion.